Hello everyone, it's Robin the Delta Crafter and I want to thank you for joining me for another video on my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be focusing on stripes, which seem to be all the rage right now. Let's take a look at the products I'll be using today. Most of the products that I'm using today are from scrapbook.com. We're going to start off with this Joyful Smooth Cardstock pad. Then we're going to use the Let's Celebrate die set, and you can see there it comes with both the dies and the shadow. And then we're going to be using the 1/4 inch slanted stripes die. I'm going to use this two different ways. Let's get crafting. So first up, what we want to do is we want to make all of our stripes. So we're going to take several different colors of the cardstock from this Joyful Cardstock pad here, and we're going to just run it through the die cutting machine and create our stripes. Now, as you can see, and as the title says, this particular die cuts stripes and at a slant. But don't let that fool you. You can definitely use these as straight stripes as well. So I'm going to pick about 4 colors which create a rainbow, albeit it's not your traditional straight-on rainbow colors, but they are going to be one of each of 5 different colors that are going to give us that rainbow effect. I'm going to be using my Spellbinders Platinum 6 that is in the black color. That's exclusively from scrapbook.com. I love this die set, this die cutting machine because it came with the universal platform, which is awesome when you're using all the different types of dies and embossing folders that are on the market right now. So I've just attached my first piece of paper to my die using a piece of Easy C tape that will just hold the paper in place as I run it through my die cutting machine. And now you can see here we're going to get tons and tons of strips of cardstock. And I'm just using my fingers to kind of go along those strips of paper and raise them off of my cutting plate and going to set them aside. And I'm going to do that with all five colors of the cardstock. So while we've got the die cutting machine out, we're going to go ahead and die cut our sentiments. We're going to be making 2 cards today, so I'm going to be using both of those sentiments. And I decided to switch things up a little bit and use the Joyful Pattern Paper Pad for our sentiment. This is a coordinating pattern paper pad that has the same colors as the solid colors cardstock, so it matches very, very nicely. So what I'm going to do in order to make sure that my sentiment shows, I'm actually going to cut the shadow from the pattern paper. And then I'm going to cut a couple of layers of the shadow in just plain white cardstock. I'm going to layer those up in a little bit to give some dimension. And then I'm going to actually cut the sentiment from black cardstock. This way, I decided to do it this way so that my sentiment could really, really easily be read. Since we have a combination of fonts, we have a block font and a scripty font. Cutting that out of pattern paper would make it hard to read, in my opinion. So cutting it out of black cardstock would make it shine and be visible a whole lot better. Be careful when you're removing your sentiments from the cardstock so that you don't tear anything. And also remember that there's an apostrophe in let's. So what you think is a throwaway or a scrap is actually the apostrophe. And so you want to make sure you hold on to that. So I'm going to start out by layering up my white cardstock shadow bases so that I can build up a nice base that's going to give us some dimension. And then I'm going to add the pattern paper final top cover to our layered up white cardstock. And I'm using the Artis glue, also from scrapbook.com. This is a great adhesive that works well when you're using strips and have a lot of area that you need to cover. So I've done our first sentiment. Now I'm going to layer up our second sentiment. And now that our first sentiment has had a little bit of time to dry, the shadow layers have, now I'm going to come in with my Barely Arts glue with its fine tip, and I'm going to apply that to our actual sentiment letters and words. Again, this is a combination of fonts. So having this small nozzle on this on my glue allows me to get into adding adhesive to those very small die cuts. And this is where I was talking about the apostrophe. You don't want to throw that away. Make sure you hold on to that. Just pressing that into place. And I place that under my acrylic block and let that rest for a little bit and adhere really well, and move on to the next sentiment, which is happy birthday. You also don't want to forget the little dot over the I in birthday, because that can easily fall away into your scraps and be swept into the trash. So I'm going to put a little pressure on that with an acrylic block, and then we're ready to move on. So the next thing that we're going to do is actually going to make our strips. And I'm using a piece of Nina Classic Crest Solar White cardstock. And you can see there that I've actually already gone ahead and trimmed it down a little bit. I've trimmed off 1/4 of an inch off of each side of the card panel, which is going to give us a lot of wiggle room to work with for our stripes. So the first thing that I like to do when I'm making stripes or on a card is to kind of do a dry fit. So I'm just going to lay out some stripes, kind of figure out the angle that I want to go, that I want my stripes to go at, and also my color arrangement. So I'm just going to kind of fiddle around with the stripes until I figure out those things. So I'm coming in with that orange first, and then the kind of marigold color, that seafoam green, and I think I want to go with that almost like a periwinkle blue kind of color, maybe cornflower be better description, and then a dark forest green. That's going to be my final color. This is a very simple card. There isn't a whole lot of like shading or extra die cuts, really frilly die cuts, or anything like that. So because of that, I'm going to add 2 sets of stripes. So I'm just going to line them up back to back and create a little bit more color, and it'll take up a little bit more space on the card, and that's going to give me a great final effect. I'm going to just bring in that sentiment real quick, kind of take a look and see how that works, and I like the way everything looks. So now it's time to start gluing down. So I'm going to bring in that Artis glue again, and I'm going to just lay down a bead of that glue on the back of each strip and lay that down. Because I'm using these strips in the diagonal, this is a very forgiving kind of way to do stripes, because you really can't mess this up. As opposed to kind of trying to go straight, whether that's horizontal or vertical. And I like that a lot. In addition to that, using liquid glue on this gives you some open time with that adhesive, so then you can wiggle things around and get them in exactly the right place that where you want them to be. So I'm just going to go down my rainbow and put all the stripes down and glue them all to my card panel. You want to make sure that you get them as tight as you can to each other, so that you don't have any white gaps of paper showing through your stripes. And once you've done that, then you want to turn your paper over and trim off your excess stripes. So I'm just bringing in a pair of really sharp scissors, and I'm gonna cut directly along the side of my card panel and trim off the extra pieces. And once I flip this back over, I really like the way it all comes together and what I'm seeing in progress right now. So now let's go ahead and adhere our sentiment to our card panel. Because there's these stripes, you want to kind of figure out which one of those sentiments you want to use. I decided to use the happy birthday sentiment for the diagonal stripes. So again, I'm going to bring in that Artis glue, just add a good amount of that to the back of the sentiment, and I'm going to use my tweezers to place the sentiment in its final place. Again, that liquid adhesive gives me a little bit of time to wiggle things around and make sure that they're in the exact place that I want them to be. So now we're going to move on to creating our second card. It's the same steps that we used with the first card with just a few additional steps. You want to make sure that you use the long strips from the strips that you created with your die cut earlier so that they go all the way across your panel. I'm going to go with the same color pattern that I used on the first card. So we're going to start in with this kind of apricot orange kind of color. I am using some Artis glue, and I'm going to apply a bead of that glue on the back of the strip. And then I'm going to place that down on my cardstock. And this is where the additional steps come in. I'm going to bring in a T ruler. And the T ruler is going to allow me to make sure that my first stripe that I lay down is exactly straight to the edges of the paper. So I'm going to hold that T ruler up against my cardstock, and I'm going to wiggle my my strip of cardstock, my colored cardstock, to make sure that it's in straight alignment. I need to make sure that I get the first strip laid down straight so that each subsequent strip can be as straight as possible. If I mess up that first one, then it's going to create a wonky looking colored rainbow along the rest of the card panel, and we don't want that. So if you get the first one straight, then you're pretty much guaranteed to have the rest of them be straight. So I'm just going to continue to go down the colors of cardstock I have, and lay down the strips, two layers of them, just like I did before. So we're going to end with this dark forest green, and you can see there we have straight strips of cardstock that have created a beautiful rainbow on our card panel. Just like before, we're going to go ahead and trim off the excess strips. We're going to flip that over and trim them off with a pair of scissors. If you have an X-Acto knife and you want to use that, you certainly can. Scissors work great, so that's what I'm going to use. So we've trimmed that off, and now it's time to place our sentiment on. I've already put some Artis glue on the back of that sentiment, and you can see there I had just a little bit of time to wiggle everything around and make sure that it was straight. Now, it wouldn't be a card made by the Delta Crafter if it didn't have some foam tape on it somewhere. So you know I added some to the back of this card panel, the card panels, plural, and pulled those backer tapes off and applied them to our card bases. The card base is made from Accent Opaque 120-pound weight cardstock. It's the standard that I use for all of my cards. I'll be sure to link all of the products that I'm using today in the description box below so that you can easily find them. Now I'm going to go ahead and apply those card panels to our card base, and with that, these cards are complete. I really like the open space, the white space on these cards. It really gives you some place for your eye to rest, as well as allowing all of the colors to really pop and shine. I want to thank you for joining me for another video on my YouTube channel. Be sure to check out my playlist where you can find lots of videos with tips and tricks for card making. If you have enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel to join the Delta Crafter family. As always, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at The Delta Crafter, as well as on my website, thedeltacrafter.com. While you're there, sign up for my newsletter to receive a freebie and check out the resource tab for other printables. Again, I want to thank you for joining me for another video on my channel, and until next time, everyone, enjoy!